Hello to my fellow citizens. This is John Catrino, one of the founders of the Citizen Body, coming to you out of Philadelphia. And I'm going to violate every rule, algorithm, every piece of advice to make your videos go viral or get views or clicks or any of that, because what's going on in the United States and the world is important enough on this Sunday, November 3rd, 2024, with an election coming on the 5th on this Tuesday. So whenever you're watching this, this is either going to be 30 years old, or it might be actually a day or two before the election or on the election day itself. But in 5.5 decades of life and being a philosopher from pretty much as early as my memories go, but quite frankly never being that into philosophy, I just always was never satisfied. I appreciated and was grateful for many things, but I just always was after a higher truth, a deeper truth, a more ultimate truth. And of course that quest started with God and religion. It's difficult sometimes to cut through the cultural hysteria and confusion that we find ourselves in right now, to really take an alien perspective and be able to, and magnanimous enough, to cull the good things that something brought you, like my Roman Catholic upbringing, and to set aside or jettison the bad, counterproductive, or even destructive things, which in the Roman Catholic Church, I think most people are aware, there's some of the greatest atrocities ever committed against human beings. And it's very easy to just vilify the entire enterprise and want it, quite frankly, wiped out or to go away. But as the greatest currently known intelligence in the universe, which second to any type of God we would be, but when I say known, that means that we can identify and empirically prove, I believe we have a higher responsibility, and that is to always take the good from everything and everyone. So as I was dissatisfied and I went through disillusionment about all these different things, and religion is just probably the most important one because it comes down to the ultimate truth, the biggest thing that matters beyond anything else, I just kept testing my new philosophy. And, you know, from kindergarten, I could remember one of my first memories of the teacher going around the room and saying, we're going to have a group, these 6 boys, what do we want to name our group? And as she went down from boy to boy, the first boy said Supermans, and the second boy said the Supermans, and the third boy said the Supermans, and the fourth boy said the Supermans. And then she comes to me. And that same feeling I have now and have been working on ever since, of realizing that if I said Supermans because the 4 people before me said Supermans, it wasn't a good reason to say I want to name the group the Supermans. And I felt this resistance to a herd sort of mentality. Even if Superman was a cool thing, and I did like Superman, but I was always interested in something more learned than simply jumping on whatever bandwagon seemed to be the cool and popular one at the time. Now, I fully understand that that could be construed or interpreted as, you know, being a Debbie Downer, not you know, being part of the fun, being a party pooper, buzzkill, whatever. But you come to these crossroads in life where you say, if my life's work is to be the life of the party, then I made a mistake when I said what I wanted the group to be. And I still remember what I said. And I said I wanted to be called the Hippos. And it was just because I think I just read something about hippos. I was just learning about them. I thought I had kind of a misperception about how violent or strong, or how they kill people. And so I had this fascination going. I wanted to learn more. And so I steered the name of the group into something that I was more fascinated with than something I felt like was already played, Superman, and well understood. So I'm not saying I was right, but I'm saying that's been my process lifelong. And it kept going, and everything that came up, every situation, school, the way we did academics, the SATs, how you get into college entry, just always questioning, like, how can this process be better? And I don't quite feel at home simply partaking in that process. I've been really had an alien perspective probably since I was born. And that doesn't mean I don't have the internal perspective. I can be as selfish as the next person. And that's one of the things I try to get to people, get them to realize about the citizen body, is this is not about a guru, a personality. I'm the most average person in the world, literally height, weight, strength, stamina, intelligence. One episode of Jeopardy is enough to just put me in such a humble place, and just respect so much people who have a brain that can retain and recall so much information. It's just incredible. And when I watch that, I want to utilize those brains. I think of the next great era of wisdom is not going to be about gurus. I think guruism is an older philosophic technology, which again doesn't mean that it doesn't have some help. But we've had gurus since the beginning of time. We currently have gurus. And this is not to take away anything from anything that they say that's of value. But it is to say the process of guruism isn't really working, is it? When we look at our culture. And one of the ideas that always bothered me was, like, you would have these people say, like, just be, just exist. Detach from everything in the world, all your desires, all your aspirations, and just be, just experience life. But it doesn't take long to just extrapolate that and say, now we have 8 billion people just being. And I guess the implication that they're trying to make is that naturally we'll find a homeostatic existence. But everything that I've observed in life and seen in my own life, that where I wanted to accomplish something specific or develop a skill, took, number one, some sort of either desire or imperative to be able to do that skill. So it wasn't always something I wanted to do, but something I needed to do, like, math or algebra, trigonometry, something like that. I didn't set out and say, I really want to learn trigonometry, but I had to get the grade, to get into college, to get the job, all that kind of stuff. Even though I had qualms about the process, something just seemed off. Like, something did not seem like it aligned with my spiritual feeling. And the spiritual feeling was, and still is, every human being I meet is a part of the same body. Call that the citizen body. And I'll get a little bit into how the citizen body idea evolved or grew into what it is. And it's really just beginning right now, because there's no marketing really. It's just organic growth. The idea is put out to people. They'll take it or leave it. They'll think it's silly, some guy talking, whatever. But I needed to find something that I utterly could believe in. And it took decades to say, okay, this process does no harm. And this process also can be extrapolated and demonstrated that it could bring some sort of truth, balance, and growth to us, not only as an individual, but as citizens. And it's interesting too, because like most people, I went through that phase of following the motivational gurus or motivational speakers. I even was lucky enough in one of my enterprises to meet one of them incognito. And it was very revealing to me about how that person was as a person and how they were as a persona. And that doesn't mean that they're all phony, but it just means that pretty much everything we see on TV and on camera is a theater. It is some sort of acting. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this kind of video, because this is a phone, a tree, my backyard area, of the complex that I live in. You can probably hear the cars on the road. This is sunlight. I don't even have a light or filter or anything. I do have a little cup of coffee I made, so I might be sipping from that occasionally. But at this point, thanks for hanging in to kind of hear a little bit of the background. The main reason for this video is it's kind of election eve. I mean, it's 2 days before right now. But I just think we can learn so much when we get to this point of breaking, really, where, you know, you are looking at, from the alien perspective, half of a country that is dreading one side winning as much as the other half is dreading the other side winning. And any thinker, philosopher, and I'm not a traditional philosopher in any sense, I call what we do at the Citizen Body technical philosophy, because it's sort of like mixed martial arts is to the martial arts themselves. I'm not really that interested in learning every martial art and its nuance. I'm more interested in what practically works. So if you've been a wrestler and, you know, a kickboxer and, you know, wrestling or jiu-jitsu and then kickboxing, you are in, you know, 75% of the way along to learning the rest of the skills that you need to be, you know, a great mixed martial artist. And that's the way I apply philosophy, is like, I'm not that interested in the details of Jeet Kune Do or Wing Chun, but I will listen to them and I will see what I can cull from them and incorporate it, what might be testable and what works. But nevertheless, when you have this situation, verge of, you've heard, you know, the murmurings started probably 3 or 4 years ago of civil war, revolution, World War III, and I will add into that global economic collapse. It's very easy to get swept up in the energy of the emotion of that and, you know, kind of pick a side, you know. And there's all these memes about how doing nothing is more evil than joining the evil side, etc. But again, reminding myself and us that we are the highest known intelligence in the universe. I think of John Steinbeck's quote, which is something paraphrased, that all warfare is a symptom of man's failure as a thinking animal. I've just always believed that from the Hippo day, that we can think our way to homeostasis. I didn't use that conception back then, but what's come to mean to me is that the ultimate goal for any God that we conceive of, or if we're parts of God, is that this body of us of 8 billion people, aka cells, finds homeostasis. A situation in which each individual has all their basic needs met and can operate optimally and at their full potential, while they're contributing to a full body, the citizen body, that is also therefore at its full potential as a body. So when we talk about those brains, some of them are Jeopardy type intelligence brains, some of them are science type intelligence brains, some of them are musical intelligence brains, and they're very, very different. Athletic intelligence brains. We have words like smart, we have words like intelligent, And we don't have words to describe. We call it a musical genius or scientific genius. But we need words that are much more careful and discerning in separating the kinds of intelligence, a medical intelligence, a philosophic intelligence. And one thing that we say is kind of the great equalizer, but probably the most debilitating deficiency that we have is wisdom. Because wisdom encompasses all kinds of intelligence and is not dependent upon any particular genius or intelligence. Wisdom can come from someone with an IQ of 78. Wisdom can come from an IQ of someone with 148. Wisdom is something that can come from a group. We are really bad at wisdom because, and my theory on this is, human life was so difficult for so long, for our roughly 100,000 years of history, to where even at the beginning of the 20th century, the infant mortality rate was somewhere around 30 to 50%, where, if you had 4 kids, chances of one of them or even 2 not making it was incredible. And that's shrunk amazingly, and life has become much more safer, and our life expectancy might not be doing good as of late, but the amount of people that stay alive past the early diseases, things like the Spanish flu in the 20s or late teens of the 1900s, it's that wiping out 50 million people. I mean, imagine if COVID had wiped out 50 million people, and in the prime of life, no less. So I'm not trying to say that to say everything's better now, because the real answer it is and it isn't. It's better for a lot more people, but it's enslaving them more economically. And it's also very precarious and volatile. So it could be like being on the verge of becoming very sick, having a heart attack, having a stroke. You might be more healthy, you start exercising, but there's something fundamentally off in your aorta. You have a aneurysm or something, so you might appear like you're much healthier, and in many ways you might be, but you're actually on the verge of something big. Now, I'm not fear-mongering. One thing I think we do wrong is prognostication. Everybody thinks they know. In the citizen body, the central philosophy, the first principle is unity, that everything you do, say affects everything else and everyone else. So that keeps you kind of grounded. But another principle is, it's called active uncertainty. The default position is, the vast majority of the time, we don't know. And we had a little quiz which you could take, which starts with basically like your own life. Like, you do not know when your life's going to end, unless you're, going to be executed, or these rare exceptions where they know the day and the time. It can happen to you right now. It can happen to you 80 years from now. It can happen to you any time in between. And when you accept that as the reality, it calibrates you better. I grew up being a Roman Catholic where, the answer was to make me feel better in the moment. Don't worry, when we die, you'll be in heaven with Spot and Fluffy and Mommy and Daddy and your brothers and sister, and everything's going to be great. And that did make me feel better in the moment. But as I went on, I had a lot of cognitive dissonance I had to work through. I'm not mad at my parents for it. I'm not mad at the culture. I'm not mad at the religion. But I'm thinking. And that's our job. If anything, when we search for meaning in life, what is more meaning than taking the highest known intelligence in the universe and trying to use it to solve the problems that we've had for the duration of our existence as a species, to not go extinct, number one, to be able to come up with other homes, but 2 is to finally reach this homeostatic balance, which we all know deep down inside we have enough resources, we have enough money, we have enough everything, food, water, shelter. And that does not mean And this is the mistake I think a lot of people make, because their emotions take over from their reasoning, because reasoning is very boring, and it's very tedious, laborious, and exhausting. So it's easier to just say, yeah, man, the billionaires should just divide up all their money and give it to everybody, and that would fix everything. But that's a treatment. That's not fundamentally addressing the human problem. And that's what's going to get us kind of to the election here. Is what we have is there is a at the core of who we are, it has to be spiritual. And people are like, well, I don't want any of this new age, like poppycock kind of stuff. I'm a Christian, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. But you have to be able to use your brain, the highest known intelligence in the universe, and just take that alien perspective and say, okay, all my faith, everything in my comfort configuration about God and all my beliefs is going to be intact. But I'm going to take a moment to do an exercise to test some of that, see how it might work for everybody else, to understand how maybe we can get more unified, like the first principle, out of this. Because I'm having trouble, quite frankly, if I am talking to whatever God it might be, unifying everyone to be a Christian. Also having trouble unifying everyone in Islam. Also, ironically, having trouble unifying everyone as a Buddhist, even though that's more of a philosophic system, but they have a central figure who is somewhat deified in the Buddha. So that gets a little funky. Hinduism, deities, very spiritual, but yet we don't see the world all just adopting Hinduism and that unifying everybody. But what could unify everybody is if we take all the spaces in between all these faiths that we even have, as like I had when I was a young Catholic, questions, and we unify upon the unknown, the questions, the things we still really don't know. Why does God wipe out villages? 200,000, maybe 250,000 people in Indonesia in the early 2000s. Countless things. The Holocaust. The Middle East. Like, why would any benevolent God allow it? Right. That's the age-old philosophical question. And I say, well, that question gets manageable when we say, well, wait, if we really stop trying to say this is the deity, and we just suspend that temporarily, and we look at these 8 billion people, and we say they're all, and if we go back in time too, to less than 8 billion people, way less than 8 billion people, but all the sun gods, and these gods, and the folk gods, and the agricultural gods, and the hunting and gathering gods, and the animal gods, and the Greek mythology, and the Roman mythology, what we really see is we see the human brain, the highest known intelligence in the universe, attempting to harness, capture truth, harness it, and utilize it to answer the unanswerable. And quite frankly, what happens is, like water will take the path of least resistance, our minds and spirits kind of want to do the same thing. They kind of want to say, oh my gosh, it's so exhausting, like trying to figure out what reality is and truth and all that. Oh, Jesus? Okay, I'm just going to do that. And we don't consciously approach it that way, but we emotionally do it that way. Many people, if they didn't come to Jesus when they were born and through their upbringing, they come to him through crisis in their life or hitting rock bottom. And this is not a slight on any Christians at all. I was a Christian for a lot of my life. I'm agnostic now. And I'm open, and this is one of the tests of active uncertainties. I am as open if Jesus walked up to me filming this video right now and said, John, knock it off, man. You're just like confusing people further. I'm God. Okay, that's fine. Or Allah wants to do that, or the Buddha, whomever. I don't really care. What I care about is what the truth is. And politicians say that, and different people promoting themselves say that, but the bottom line is that's the entirety of what the citizen body enterprise is. Because if we get closer to truth, more calibrated to reality, therefore we're more capable to harness and deal with what we need to do to get balance. Because you can't balance things when the values are moving and deceptive, and they're not true. You can't do it. If you give me weights that I know all the weights of, the reality of their mass, I can find a way to balance them. If you give me weights that you lie about what all the weights are, and I don't have a scale, it's mass confusion. So it's amid this confusion, this adopting beliefs to make things easier, this uncomfortable, this discomfort with uncertainty, this inability, this anxiety over uncertainty, and then this. Meanwhile, this culture has grown into, and I think I'm maybe even at the perfect age to have been in the 70s with TV commercials with like sugary cereals that had a prize in it, that our parents gave a little pushback on. You know, you can't have the Crunch Berry Captain Crunch, but once in a while you could have the regular Captain Crunch or something like that. You know, but we still got the Captain Crunch at the end of the day, but, you know, we also had to eat enough shredded wheat to go along with it. So my parents did their best. But all of this starts happening where it's like, oh, well, we could make a lot of money selling cereals to the kids, and they love the cartoons, and that's a big market, and that's a captive audience. And here we go, we're off to the races, toys, all these things. And then it's like, you get into your teens, and it's like sneakers and Adidas t-shirts back in those days, and concert t-shirts, and just Sebagos and Levi's, and anything that was cool and made you feel cool or have a certain status. It was like, that was it. So what I didn't realize was happening is my philosophy, even though I'm the lifelong technical philosopher, I'm still participating enough in life that I don't want to be a complete outcast, because I don't think that's productive either. So I did save up for my Sebago shoes. If you don't know what they are, just you know, search that, Sebego, I think it's something along those lines, but I forget. And this is the 80s version, not whatever the current version is, but, and there's an endless array of them. I mean, you know, Tommy Hilfiger was big. I remember Ralph Lauren was big. It's just, whatever it is, it's just the brand du jour that makes you cool. Because now there's new brands to make. Those brands I've probably already made myself completely uncool to everybody under the age of 40. So, but as you get older and you go into different enterprises and you start, you know, trying to make this all balance and feel right, so you feel good. And this is a concept that we refer to called, we didn't make it up, but it's called divine discontent. There's what you need to do in the world to be successful and to get some status and some esteem from the world, and, you know, survive financially, and to get, you grow wealth, and to get into a good school district, into all the things that go with wealth, the freedom of wealth. And then there's what you want to do spiritually. And another way to think of the citizen body is that this is a giant think tank for all of us, where we try to close that gap. That why can't what we want to be spiritually be closer to what the world? It's almost like that's the discontent. It's the like, I'm wearing this mask as a business person 60 hours a week, and then I put on this mask, and sometimes I can't even take that mask off, because everything else in life, Little League, school, you know, PTA, like it all starts to require the same sort of going along with the system as is. And then we're teaching our kids the same things, how to get ahead in a really corrupt and broken system. And this isn't just something like, this corrupt, broken system is not like some evil class warfare, rich versus poor, eat the rich thing. That's not a healthy use of our precious human energy. So what do? We have the divine discontent. Citizen body is in place to basically close that gap. And to reiterate an earlier point, that is not that just be and just experience life, because I can walk that through the rigors of logical argument, and it doesn't work either, because how do you build bridges and tunnels, and we do need rockets. I'm not saying we need billionaires, you know, with pet projects for rockets, but we do need rockets, because, you know, this Earth is not going to be here forever, and we're going to have to deal with asteroids and space and things. And I don't mean maybe in the next, even millennium, but, beyond that, we need to really start thinking if we really want the species to survive. I have friends that are basically of the mindset that, we're all just ultimately doomed as a species anyway. So there is no meaning, and, all we can do is just be comfortable through our lifetime. I just think that again is unknown. You don't know for sure that we can't find a way to keep the species going. So I'm taking these side paths, because that first principle of everything connecting, that means that you need to be able to deal with everything that comes in the material world through that principle, and what we call true center of everything, of homeostasis in the citizen body and the individual. So now we confront this election. Well, in my quest, I happen to have spent 10 years working in the political system in the city of Philadelphia, which probably has a reputation, some of you maybe know, of being like the most corrupt city and all that. To be honest with you, I did work in Florida too, and I just think that it's like Philly fans. It has a certain flair, but there's no less corruption than, say, Chicago and some of the places that I've experienced. And, the only thing that makes it uniquely Philadelphia is our style, I would say, quite frankly. And maybe the fact that the country started there, so it has sort of like a special, link into politics. But I will tell you this right now, that one of the first things I realized in politics, when I got into politics in my, say, mid-30s, is I was utterly clueless as to the world that existed, that is the political world. I didn't know what a ward was. I really didn't know. We call them divisions in Philadelphia for some reason, but every place else they're precincts. I knew what a precinct was when you went to vote. I didn't really understand the primary process. I didn't understand why there were 2 elections every year. I didn't understand what a midterm election really was about. I had no idea what a city controller did, or all these different positions, and who was elected, who was appointed, and all these different things. And I'm not asking anybody to learn all that stuff, but although we do want to incorporate that into our Power Citizen course here at the Citizen Body, to give people just the information that they need to be more powerful as a citizen, or use their power as a citizen better. But this world that opened up, I almost want to call it an underworld, because after being in it for a while, and someone asked me, what is politics like? And I said, well, it's really a lot like the mafia, with a little less killing. And I say that to try to be educational, not to try to be dramatic. It attracts, at this point, as our culture has degraded from those cereal commercials to consumerism, and CEO pay and money being more and more and more important, and more a measure. Because there was a point where excess wealth was almost looked at as maybe excess body fat. It was you got a little feeling of oh wow, that's kind of an indication that something's a little out of balance, something's a little off. They might be a little bit greedy, And there was a shame, not that you were completely shamed if you were wealthy, but that shame diminished over time, to where, as I would argue, that as our investment in spirituality and religion went down, our worship of money and billionaires went up, to where they supplanted the spiritual, moral, ethical leaders, and again, there's problems in religion, but the solution isn't that, just worship money and the acquisition of money, obviously, but that happened in large measure. So when this election, when we look at it, all of those things were at play. The divine discontent, what our culture has become, consumerism, because this election is largely a marketing contest. You might as well be watching Coke and Pepsi duel for who's going to be president. It's that much an orchestrated product of political theater. And so my time in politics taught me we're attracting people who love the game of it. It is a big game. So I worked with big business people and I worked with big politicians, and I got to know the archetype of the people that are like mini versions of Trump, mini versions of Biden, Harris, that get really good at the craft of basically getting elected. And we then, as the citizens, have, again, a sort of divine discontent split. We have this, well, I know that there's a lot of corruption and lying, and there's career politicians, and they want things like term limits, but I'm still going to vote for them because the other guy is going to ruin the country, or the other gal is going to ruin the country. And I'm just asking to take some time to examine that process and see if you would agree that that's the same process that got us here in the first place. Right around the time of Occupy Wall Street, there seemed to be this like complete distrust in government, in the media, and Americans were kind of at their wits' end, and they just lost faith. They lost faith in our system. And then that's when Trump came along as this, hey, I'm a non-politician, I'm outside the system, I'm one of you, and that guy that before I understood the political game, I don't want politicians, I want people that aren't in that game. Now, I'm going to talk to both sides. I'm going to talk to the people on the right and the people on the left. So the people that gave Trump a chance found out, the ones that are really magnanimous found out that it didn't work. I'm not going to get into arguments about which policies, and he had things that did work in his policies, but he had many things that didn't. And the main overarching point is, no matter what else you think, is that the country got divided, just more vitriolic, more hateful of one another. And that is job one, I will tell you, of any leadership at the citizen body, is that it's about uniting people first and foremost. Because if you don't have that, you basically are just setting the stage for civil war and unrest. You're tearing the body apart. It is hugely disrespectful, and it's a squandering of human intellect. But he's not the only one that's done that. That was done by many leaders. We became very divided and lost trust before that. So the whole system is basically what you're watching is a political theater with an actor du jour. In this case, it's now Trump, under the guise of like going to save us from what's basically most people would admit is an oligarchy. And the D side, even though both political parties, the Republicans and Democrats, are basically the two wings of that duopoly, which is part of the oligarchy. People are so scared of Trump becoming Hitler that they're just like, okay, this is evil itself, incarnate, and all the people that follow him are evil, and this needs to be stopped. And the country, like they really feel in their heart of hearts, like the country will fall to fascism, and like we'll basically have a Hitler. I mean, that's what the feeling is that's driving their motivation. On the other side, and people like, I'll even cite my father, who grew up in Czechoslovakia when it was taken over by the communists. He sees and hears many things that are triggering him that you are watching on the other side, the march to communism taken over. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm telling you what I see when I talk to people on both sides of this. So you have one who will fight to the death, convinced that the Harris-Walz campaign is the beginning of communism. And you have another that'll fight to the death, and many replicas of these people, that Trump is going to be Hitler. So let's just, from the alien perspective, accept that's what's going on psychologically. So the fear drives the vote to not have Hitler or to not have Stalin, right? While that's going on, what I've been doing is seeing all the broken and the corruption and what's dysfunctional and broken in our political system. Is I've been talking to citizens and finding out how we can actually subvert that power concentration that wants to be the path of least resistance for every American. Like, pick a side, and the answer is defeating that other side. While this is going on too, we've degraded the civic process into a sports fandom contest, a horse race. You can, I don't know if you guys know, but you can actually bet money, win money and lose money, just like sports betting, on the election. And there's professors at colleges and stuff that, I think one of them's even involved with the platform that allows you to do this. And I just think if anything's indicative of, American integrity and spiritual core having dysfunction, that would be it. You can have gambling. I don't think gambling is a sinful, wrong thing. I don't think sugar is either. But if you have 100 to 200 grams of sugar a day, and we do, and you look at our diabetes rate, our hypertension, our dementia, then you say, well, maybe there can be too much sugar. Maybe we need less sugar. Maybe we need less gambling. Maybe we need to keep the gambling out of sacred things like civics, like presidents. So all that said, our concern, the citizen body, is when we use the power of our vote. I understand the fear that we are going to turn into Nazi Germany, or we're going to turn into communist Russia, right? I understand that fear. I do. But when you say to yourself, I don't want either, and I know there's people listening to this who say, you're just wrong, it's definitely Trump's the bad guy, or vice versa. Like, literally, I'm accused of being a communist as much as I'm accused of being a fascist, just for talking like this. But what I've realized is, I call it, another principle we have the principle of extrapolation. And that is, basically, if everyone did what you're proposing, what would be the results? So if we said we're not going to endorse billion-dollar presidential campaigns, the system as is, the Republican and Democratic parties have wrought havoc upon our culture. The commercials, the vitriol, the mudslinging, the disgracefulness, the stunts, the calling each other garbage, just the disgracefulness of the degradation of our sacred civic process. And if I didn't say it yet, we're talking about a spiritual problem in our country. There's not a political solution to it. But what we can use is that power of the vote to subvert and undercut, undermine, remove all of that money, vote against those commercials, vote against both a communist type America or a Nazi type America, although I would say it's improbable we would move directly into that, but I understand why people feel that. And I'm not even saying I'm right. I've just calculated that if I'm wrong, I'm okay. I'll be at peace for trying what I tried. Because if everyone just said, okay, enough is enough, we're not accepting these candidates, we're not accepting these politics, we're not accepting all the commercials, we're not accepting this consuming and accosting us in our daily lives, like the incessant and unrelenting onslaught of text and commercials on social media, on TV, everything we try to watch, every place we go. It's just, the motorcades. I'm in Pennsylvania, so it's like we're a swing state. It's rather disgraceful, it's rather shameful, especially as a person who genuinely and earnestly entered into the political process and tried to make a difference. And being on the winning side too, but then realizing that we didn't really win. But nevertheless, if we take that process of extrapolation and every single person out of the, let's say, 160 some million voters, maybe 70, and said, okay, we're giving none of our power to either of these two sides, okay? And I know that's impossible to do right now because we're at the pinnacle of the emotions of it. But what I've developed and what we're trying to help other people develop is that you really can take your emotions out of it. And that is, I vote third party or independent. It's the same, we call it vote small. It's like shop small. But what it means is that you're looking at power concentration. You don't care about the actors that these productions have put as their stars. It's really not about them. As much as we want to believe that, and as human beings, we want to make it easy. Just like it's easy to root for a football team, it's easy to root for one of these actors and then believe that somehow they're going to save us. But if everyone in this thought experiment just refused to vote for red or blue and went with any of the other selections, you have a Green Party selection in many states, you have a Libertarian Party selection, you have independents, you have a Socialist Party, and you have a Constitution Party. So you really have a pretty good blend, whether you lean right or left, or you're a middle kind of person. You actually have a decent array of choices, and if they're not even on the ballot, you can write them in. But you're not hearing about all this stuff because when power concentrates like it has, and most people realize that the businesses have become fewer and more monopolistic, the political parties have become fewer and more monopolistic, and the money is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the less that the average citizen gets to participate in it, because it's like the ante in the game. If it was a fair game, the ante would be $1, but the ante to play in these games is tens of thousands of dollars to really have any kind of impact. And look, I realize there's candidates that come along and say, hey, we all of our donations are from small people, but I don't have time to get into this video, but that the entire premise of raising money and being a marketing person as an elected official, I think has got to change. The thing that we don't realize as citizens, and it took me a long time to realize, is we can be the change. All we have to do is don't vote for it. These small parties and independents raise barely any money because everybody's out there betting on the horse they think is going to win. There's no payoff to them if the Libertarian or the Green Party wins. There's no payoff to them. You don't win money unless you do the stupid betting thing, which is just really tragic for our country. But what I'm challenging you to think about is, if everyone, 170 million people, refuse to vote R or D, not only would you solve any suspicion about the election being fixed, because everyone would know not one of us voted red or blue, and somehow one of them won. That can't be correct. I didn't vote for him, you didn't vote for him, you didn't vote for him, and you're taking all of that concentrated corrupt power in the oligarchy and its political wings, and you're cutting it off at the knees. All those billions, it's going to be about $18 billion they're spending on countrywide races. You're rendering that useless, a loss. So, people think GameStop was like some big against rich guys. They actually created rich guys just on the other side, and it's not a sustainable practice, and it's not a good practice. This is a much better way. Just don't think of it as a zero-sum game. Don't think of it as a Super Bowl, a contest. It's not. It is a civic, sacred process where you are realizing you don't know if you're right, but you are doing the best you can with the candidates given to you. And if you cannot prioritize that in our system, that our number one problem is the corruption and the power concentration, regardless of whose flag we're flying under, red or blue, if you believe that either of them are not corrupt, get into politics and you will see. If you believe they're corrupt, but you need, and I think most of my friends fall into this category, oh yeah, I know it's all corrupt, but this one's going to turn us into, Russia, or this one's going to turn us into Nazi Germany. And And I said, even if you're right and that happens, you're violating your principle, because you know it's a corrupt system and it's power concentrated and it's controlled by an oligarchy, and you're condoning it and you're creating more of the same. Because if Trump goes away, there'll be another to replace him. If Harris goes away, there'll be another to replace her. So it's not about the people. It's not about Trump. It's not about Harris. It's about the system that you are putting the power of your vote to reinforce or to redirect. And you can have 170 million votes say no more Republicans and Democrats until they, get the money out. Take all this vitriol, divisiveness, this battling, these budgets, closing down the country every time there's a balanced budget hearing. It's made a laughing stock of the citizen that we put up with it. We feel like these people are somehow our leaders, and they do. I can tell you right now, behind closed doors, the political class refers to the citizens as nobodies. You're nobody. In that game, you are a nobody. And basically, we know how you're going to vote because we know how you're registered and we know your race, and we make it so easy for them. We're like literally laying ourselves down to be manipulated by voting straight party or single issue. Those are the two worst things you can do to further deepen the hole that the citizen is in. And if you don't think there's a hole, right around 1980 is when the majority of households were single earner. I remember in the 70s having my dad work. I don't care if it's dad or mom, it's not about that, but it's just about the fact that only one in the entire household earned the income. Taking trips to the beach. We were not rich. We didn't have a pool table. We didn't have a pool. I had to go to my friends for that. We didn't have air conditioning in the car, but we had vacations. My mom took care of the house. All the decorations were up every holiday. We had home cooked meals every night at the dinner table. And it was a pretty good life. And then right around 1980 is when moms, you started noticing they're working part-time at the grocery store, or they're getting jobs. And you're thinking, well, that's great for women. And it looks like a win on paper. And there is a part of it that's a win, that anyone, regardless of their gender, can work and have a career. But what's the loss? The loss is that you now have double the people dedicated to spending time just earning money, while the kids get less parenting and they take care of the household less. And what happened in the meantime? All that extra money was swallowed up by skyrocketing costs of housing, of healthcare, and of college, to the tune of roughly 500% for each of those by the time we reach about 2015 to 2020. And median household income was only up, right now it's up about 50% over 1980. So it's about 75,000. It was about 50,000. That's household income, median household income. So from the alien perspective, that's an obvious con. There's no way that you can slice that deal. No one would ever take that deal to say, well, I'll tell you what, you got one person working now. What we're going to give you is you're going to get another 50,000 for your household in 5 decades, or I'm sorry, 4 decades, 4.5. But your overall living expenses, your majors of housing, healthcare, and college are going to be up about 500%. No one would sign off on that deal. But we did every time we vote red and blue, because we have an equal proportion for the same 4 or 5 decades where that played out. So when you look at things like that, and I did because I was in the political system and I was trying to figure it out more like a scientist. That's my background, is biology. That's where we came up with the citizen body analogy, and how our body balances all these trillions of cells in homeostasis and cooperative mode. But why can't we? Why is it so hard? Why is it so confounding and just really, it's like spiritually debilitating? It's like, it's just, we can't get there. So I'm not asking you to change your vote even. I'm just asking you to think about a new way of using your power And the quagmire about this power is that it's only effective when we all do it. I'm not saying we have to vote for the same person. I'm just saying we have to vote for the same system. And the system we have now is an utterly power concentrated, utterly corrupt, monopolistic crony system. And that's represented in the red and blue parties. The other ones aren't angelic and above it, but they can't be power concentrated. So you've eliminated that. They can't be that corrupt yet because they don't owe anybody for giving them any money. They might be, but that's our job as citizens. What this would be like, an analogy is, if I go to the doctor and he says, well, John, we got pre-diabetes, got high blood pressure, we've got, some things going on with your, fatty acids, and, you're in bad shape. You need statins, you need blood pressure medication, you need these pills, these pills. I would say, oh, okay, well, doc, how about this? Let me take a look at, what I'm eating, how I'm exercising, how I'm resting, lifestyle, meditation, whatever first. Do we have time to try that? Well, yeah, I guess we can give you like 30 days, so it's not really dangerous. Okay, so let's try that. This is not the way our medical system is working right now. But then we think of our citizen body, we think of our civic system. It's like, oh, well, we have all these symptoms, we have all these illnesses. Obviously, there's an imbalance. I mean, in a way, our economy is very analogous to what's happening with diabetes in the body. There's all this money, but it's all going to store as fat in the top 10 or 1%, whereas it's not reaching the working cells, the citizens, as much as it should, because we've created such astronomically high costs for everything because we flooded the system with so much money. So the nature shows us so much that we could learn from about why our system is so broken. So once we start looking at it that way, we're less hateful of like some other side, because we don't even take the side seriously, because we realize that they're part of the theater that's trying to get us to perpetuate the overarching oligarchy that has those two sides. We have to be smart enough as citizens to look past that and brave enough to say, if this results in World War III, Civil War, or revolution, we can't really know. But the likelihood of one of these two power concentrated corrupted sides precipitating that type of event versus a Green Party person, a Libertarian, a Constitution Party person, a Socialist Party person, like actually having that kind of power with a Congress that's not set up in their favor to do any of that is extremely unlikely. And to me, that's the safest bet, is to steer out of all the volatility of the red and blue, and all of the money and the war machine that's behind these people. And this is something to think about. I'm never mad at anybody for who they vote for. I think we have a spiritual problem in our country. It's at the core, and we don't have a political solution to it. But we can use our spirituality to think of ourselves as one body, and we can use our power then en masse together to redirect that power away from essentially what functions in the citizen body like a tumor. It's a concentration of power that's sucking up most of the resources out of balance, and to the detriment of the health of the majority of the cells in the body. That's what a tumor is. That's what cancer is. So when you start to think of your vote that way, you're like, am I voting for the tumor or am I voting against the tumor? Then you start to say, okay, well, I'm not even worried about one election at a time. I'm worried about my strategy in voting throughout time, that I'm making chess moves each election. I'm not making a zero-sum win or lose. I feel no celebration in whoever wins. I feel no, loss in whoever loses. It's not fixing anything of this tumor. What would make me feel good is that we strategically start redirecting the power. And I'll try to wrap up with, that's just the civic power we have as citizens and political power. If we learn to use that better, now if we add shop small to that, where we're specifically and strategically giving our money and dollars to the smallest possible business entity, en masse, like we really did it, and we steered away, not because they're evil, not because any, one enterprise is, the bad guy, or we want to eat the rich. It's just because they have enough. It's just about balance. It's not even resentful. It's just like, if I see, two people on the street, and I see one person with, 4 pizza boxes, and I see another person with a crumb, I'm not going to give more pizza to the person with 4 pizzas. I'm going to give it, if I have a piece to give, to the person with the crumb. It's that simple. And I'm not even a hero. I'm just I believe in something bigger than ourselves, and I believe in the balance, that the balance is divine, and that we all have a part in it. So I hope that gives you a little bit different take on why Kamala is the worst thing in the world, or why Trump is the worst thing in the world. And I understand. Believe me, I get. That's why I'm never mad at anybody for who you vote for or what you believe. But I will be absolutely unrelenting in my adherence to good arguments. And my argument is, if you keep voting for that, you're going to concentrate power further, and you're never going to get out of the cycle, because you're always going to have this political theater that basically takes all of the current of human energy and attaches everybody to it like it's some Super Bowl, some horse race, people betting on it. Really take some time in the alien perspective, and it's pretty disgraceful what's happening with the commercials and the betting, and the degradation of the process, and the mudslinging, the vitriol. It's become like Idiocracy, the movie. And if you haven't seen that, it's not that it's the greatest cinematic or film accomplishment, but it really makes a point about how things can go if we don't cultivate our intelligence and come together with a higher road mentality and aspiration, and realize that we are all better than what we're being fed. Hope that helped a little bit. This was long form. Haven't really done one yet, but I thought it needed to be done right before the election. I respect whatever you think, but I will always challenge what you think. Best of luck.